The bar was too elegant for someone like Julia. She knew it the moment she walked in. Shoes still damp from the rain and curls fighting against the New York winter. Her coat wasn't expensive. Her purse was frayed near the zipper, and the hostess had hesitated just a second too long before letting her in. But Julia didn't care. She was here for a drink, to wait for a friend, and to kill 30 minutes before heading home to her tiny Brooklyn apartment with radiators that hissed like serpents. She sat near the back at a corner table, tucked beneath a chandelier that looked like glass vines spilling gold. The lighting was low, the music soft, and everything smelled like money. Then her phone rang. "Nana," she whispered, eyes widening at the screen. She answered without thinking. Pronto. The dialect rolled off her tongue like water from a familiar spring. Not the polished Italian she taught at community college or used in translation gigs, but Sicilian, the real kind, the kind only grandmothers used when they were angry or tender. "Nana si miu hai pigatu? I met Medikini." Her voice lowered, intimate, soft like the kitchen table in Messina where she used to eat figs off a plate her grandfather painted. On the other side of the room, someone froze. Adriana Duca did not freeze easily. But the moment that voice sliced through the air, that dialect, her heart slammed against her ribs, like a warning bell. She hadn't heard it in 15 years. Not since her mother died. Not since the world shifted under her feet, and the language of her childhood became something she buried deep with everything else soft and sacred. Adriana raised her eyes from her glass of Amaro Lucano and found the voice's source. A woman, curly hair, cheap coat, animated hands, speaking the language of Adriana's ghosts. Her breath caught. She didn't move, didn't blink. She listened as if the words alone could transport her to a kitchen long gone, to a warmth her father had crushed with iron fists and cold commands. Julia laughed softly into the phone. "No, Nana, non sira miwaku. A solinoti." She listened a little more than sighed. "Ta demani too." She hung up and turned. And that's when she noticed the woman staring at her. Dark eyes, designer, everything. The kind of woman who didn't just belong in this bar, she owned it. Julia flinched. "Scusa." Adriana's voice was low, husky with a hint of something raw. "Say, Siciliana." There was a B and then Julia smiled. "Born and raised." "Yumsina," Adriana said. "But it's been a long time." "I'm from Athena, too," Julia said, blinking. "Small world." Adriana laughed. Or tried to. The sound was unfamiliar. Rusty in her throat. Apparently not that small. "I haven't heard that dialect in years." "It's a dying art," Julia said, warming. "I keep it alive with my na." She refuses to speak anything else. "She's right," Adriana said. "Everything else sounds fake." Exactly. Julia's eyes lit up and something shifted in Adriana's chest. Something slow and aching. The woman was radiant. Not in the polished way Adriana had come to expect from those around her, but in the way wildflowers were radiant, unassuming, beautiful, because they didn't try to be. They talked about Sicily, about food that never tasted right in New York, about grandmothers and markets and phrases only locals understood. Julia gestured when she spoke, made jokes of her eyes, and laughed so freely that Adriana's stomach twisted with something she hadn't felt in over a decade. Hunger, not for food, for something else. When Julia's friend finally arrived, flustered, apologizing, Adriana felt a spike of panic. The kind that sliced through the chest before you even understood why. She reached into her purse slowly and made a tiny motion toward the back of the room. "Marco saw." Of course he did. The man saw everything. He moved before Julia could reach the door. "Miss," he said gently, offering a card. "Mr. Luca would be honored if you'd join her for dinner tomorrow." Julia blinked, looked down at the elegant card, looked up at the man who didn't look like a waiter or a bartender or anything casual. I mean why?" Marco didn't smile, just said, "She enjoyed your company." "That's rare." Julia looked back. Adriana was watching her, not with flirtation, not even curiosity, but something deeper. Something that looked like hope, strangled and dangerous. Against her better judgment, against every instinct of a girl who worked too much and trusted too little, Julia nodded. Tell her yes. Julia stood outside the restaurant, eyes flicking up to the carved letters above the door. Cavolo Nero. She'd looked it up as soon as she'd gotten home the night before. The business card still warm from Marco's hand. A place so exclusive it didn't even appear on Google Maps. No menu online. No reviews, just whispers, rumors. Celebrities went in, but nobody ever posted pictures from the inside. Julia had hesitated for hours, torn between instinct and curiosity. The smart thing would have been to ignore it. She wasn't part of this world, not the glittering one with silk tablecloths and valet parking. She was a freelancer who skipped lunch to pay rent, who reused tea bags twice, who taught night classes in dusty buildings that smelled like chalk and old coffee. But when she remembered Adriana's eyes, the way they had lingered on her face like they were trying to memorize something important, she felt something tighten inside her. So here she was, and now she was late. She stepped through the door and was immediately enveloped by velvet shadows and candlelight. The host didn't ask her name. He just nodded once as if he had been waiting for her all along and led her through the room. The restaurant was quiet, intimate. No music, just the clink of glasses and murmurs in different languages. And then she saw her. Adriana Duca sat at a private table near the back beneath a hanging lantern that turned her dark hair to ink. She was wearing black, not dramatic, but effortless, power wrapped in elegance. Her posture was perfect, but her fingers tapped the stem of her wine glass like a tell, nervous, waiting. When she saw Julia, her mouth parted slightly. You came? She said, standing. You invited? Julia replied, slipping into the seat opposite her. Adriana gave a small smile. I don't usually do that. Invite strangers to dinner. Feel anything when they leave? Julia raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy with questions neither was ready to ask. Wine, Adriana offered. Sure. Adriana poured with steady hands, then glanced at her. Tell me something I don't know about you. Julia tilted her head. Why? Because I know what you sound like in Sicilian. I know what your laugh does to me. I'd like to know more. My Nana used to say, wine should only be drunk with people who make your heart feel like music. Adriana blinked. Is that what I do? I don't know yet, Julia said, sipping. But you have good taste in red. That made Adriana laugh, a soft, surprised sound. And Julia couldn't help smiling in return. They talked through antipasti, their conversation meandering through old Sicilian sayings, childhood stories, and the horror of American espresso. Julia was sharp and funny, and she didn't try to impress. Adriana found herself leaning in, drawn to her warmth like a moth to the flicker of something real. By the time the second course arrived, the tension between them had shifted, softened. Less curiosity, more gravity. Adriana reached for a piece of bread, fingers brushing Julia's by accident. The contact was brief, but something sparked. Neither of them moved away. Your hands are cold, Julia murmured. I'm not used to being touched, Adriana replied before she could stop herself. Julia searched her eyes. Because of who you are, Adriana exhaled, gaze darting down. Because of what I've had to become. Julia didn't press. She just let her fingers linger for a second longer before returning to her wine. Adriana felt the absence like a sting. And you? She asked quietly. What are you used to? Julia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Working, worrying, teaching students who'd rather be anywhere else. Watching my Nana grow smaller every time I visit. That's not all you are. No, Julia said, but it's most of what people see. Adriana stared at her, her chest tight. I see more. The words came out too raw, too fast. Julia blinked, startled. You don't know me? Not yet, Adriana said. But I want to. Julia's breath hitched. For a moment, the table disappeared. The restaurant, the city. It was just them. Two women pulled from opposite ends of the world, locked in something neither fully understood. When dessert came, Adriana didn't touch it. Julia did. She moaned quietly after the first bite. God, you're telling me you can afford this, and you don't eat the chocolate torte. I have other cravings, Adriana said, voice low. Julia met her eyes, and the air between them thickened. Such as warm hands, Adriana said, reaching across the table again. Laughter, familiar voices. Sounds dangerous, Julia murmured. Adriana's smile flickered. It is, so why invite me here? Adriana hesitated. Because when I heard your voice last night, something woke up inside me. Something I thought I'd buried, and I needed to see if it was real. Is it? Julia asked, her tone barely above a whisper. Adriana's eyes searched hers. You're sitting here, aren't you? The check never came. Of course, it didn't. The staff simply nodded to Adriana as they rose, like they'd already taken care of it. Outside, the air was crisp. A black car idled at the curve. Julia hesitated. I'll take the train. Let Marco drive you, Adriana offered, already moving toward the door. It's safer. I'm not afraid. You should be, Adriana said, then caught herself. I mean, the city's unpredictable. Julia studied her. You're used to giving orders. I'm used to them being followed. That's not how I work. Good, Adriana said. I'm tired of people who do. Julia stood still as the car door opened behind her. Adriana watched her. Every line of her body tense like she was waiting for rejection, but Julia just said, one ride. Adriana nodded, hiding her relief. One ride. As the door closed behind them and the car slid into traffic, their hands rested between them. Not touching, not yet, but close enough that every bump in the road made their fingers graze. Neither of them pulled away. The silence in the car wasn't empty. It pulsed with every unsaid thing. Every look they hadn't dared hold too long during dinner. Every question neither had asked, but both were thinking. The city moved around them in blurs of light, honks, shadows. But inside the black SUV, time crawled, thick and slow. Adriana sat still, posture perfect, but her fingers curled tightly in her lap. Julia glanced at her more than once, then finally leaned back against the leather seat, sighing. You don't talk much when you're not asking the questions. Adriana turned her head slowly. I'm thinking about you. Julia's brows lifted. Well, that's not intimidating at all. Adriana smiled, a slow, almost apologetic curve of her lips. I'm not used to people making me nervous, do I? Terribly. Why? Because you speak the language of everything I lost, Adriana said softly. And because I can't tell if you're dangerous to me or if I'm dangerous to you. Julia looked at her, really looked, the eyes, the elegance, the sharp angles softened only slightly by the intimacy of the small space. She wasn't sure who this woman was. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. And yet, every cell in her body leaned in. You don't have to protect me, Julia said. I'm not fragile. No, Adriana agreed. But you're not armored? Not like me? Maybe that's why we're sitting here right now. Julia murmured. You remember what it feels like not to be made of steel. Steel doesn't feel, Adriana said. It survives. The car slowed near Julia's block. Hey, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and drop a like to help us grow even more. And let me know in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story so far? Your feedback makes all the difference. She recognized the bodega on the corner, the yellow light flickering from the deli where she bought her discount wine. She shouldn't want this woman to see where she lived, but a part of her didn't care. Or maybe a part of her did care, but wanted to be seen anyway. The car stopped. Neither of them moved. So Julia said, Do you do this often? What? Invite strangers to dinner? Send them home with drivers. Stare at their mouths like you're thinking about kissing them. Adriana didn't blink. No, so I'm special. You have no idea, Adriana whispered. The air went thick, charged. Julia's heartbeat climbed, traitorous and loud in her ears. She leaned closer just a fraction. You could, she said. Kiss me, I mean. Adriana's breath caught. I shouldn't. Why not? Because I'm not safe. Julia leaned in further until her lips brushed Adriana's cheek, just shy of her mouth. You're the safest thing I've wanted in years. Adriana turned her head and then their mouths met. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't timid. It was years of longing pressed into seconds. Adriana kissed like she was starved. Julia kissed like she'd finally found something worth breaking rules for. Fingers and hair, lips desperate, breath shared like secrets. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. I'm sorry, Adriana whispered. Don't be, Julia replied. Just don't lie to me later and say it didn't mean anything. Adriana looked stunned. I wouldn't. Good. Julia opened the car door. Cold air rushed in. So will I see you again? If you want to, I do. Julia paused. But I don't want a fairy tale. I want you, whoever that is. Adriana stared at her. Something fractured behind her eyes. You're not scared. Terrified, Julia said. But I'm more scared of never seeing what that kiss could become. Adriana almost said something. But she didn't. Instead, she watched Julia step out. Watched her walk away down the sidewalk. Curls bouncing, coat pulled tight, and for the second time in 2 days. She whispered words she never thought she'd say again. Don't let her walk away. But there was no Marco this time, no one to intercept. Just Adriana alone in the dark car, heart thudding. Lips still tingling from something that felt like the beginning of the end, or maybe the beginning of everything. The next day, Julia tried to focus. She had translation work piled up and a class to teach, but her mind kept drifting to black eyes, to the feel of lips on hers, to the sadness behind a perfectly composed face. A knock on her door at 8:30 p.m. startled her. She opened it and froze. Adriana. No driver, no security. Just Adriana in jeans and a wool coat holding something in both hands. A small box and a single cannolo. You said you made them, she said. But I've never tasted yours. Julia opened the door wider. Come in then. But I warn you, once you taste it, you'll never settle for anything less. Adriana smiled. I'm counting on that. As the door closed behind her, Julia felt something shift in the air. Not fear, not danger, but possibility. And she realized that maybe, just maybe, some people don't walk into your life to take anything. They come to give you something you didn't know you were missing. Adriana stepped inside like someone entering a memory. Her eyes swept the modest apartment, the faded rug, the small round table with a mismatched chair, the framed photo of an old woman beside a plate of lemons, and something about it made her chest ache. It wasn't the kind of place she ever entered. It wasn't guarded, grand, or filled with polished surfaces and secrets. It was soft, honest. It smelled like sugar and warm spice, like someone had cooked here recently, not for show, but for love. Julia didn't say anything for a moment. She just watched Adriana's expression, the way she seemed to take everything in like a stranger walking into her childhood home. You're not used to small spaces, Julia said finally. I'm not used to real. Once, Adriana murmured, setting the cannolo box carefully on the table. Everything in my world is staged. You live like you're not trying to hide anything. Julia raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a dangerous accusation coming from someone who clearly is. Adriana smiled tightly. Touché, Sid. Julia said, if you're going to taste the best cannoli this side of the Atlantic, you should do it properly. Adriana obeyed slowly, pulling out the chair. She sat with the kind of elegance that couldn't be taught. Chin high, hands folded neatly, spine straight. Julia, on the other hand, moved with warmth, pouring espresso from a stovetop pot, placing a small plate in front of her guest, unwrapping the cannolo like it was something sacred. "This," Julia said, placing it down, "is my Nana's recipe. Ricotta whipped by hand, citrus zest, a little marsala in the shell. You're not allowed to lie about how you feel when you bite it." Adriana stared at it like it was a relic. "I haven't had one since my mother died." Julia's eyes softened. "Then this one's for her." Adriana bit and froze. Her eyes fluttered closed. She didn't speak. She didn't breathe. Julia sat quietly watching her. When Adriana opened her eyes again, they were shining. "It's like hers," she whispered. "Exactly like hers. Nana says there's only one way to make a cannolo. Anything else is blasphemy." Adriana let out a laugh that broke halfway through. Like it didn't know whether to be joy or grief. "You don't understand. I've tried them everywhere. In Rome and Palermo, they're never right. They're always fake. So, am I the real thing?" Julia asked gently. Adriana looked at her long and hard. "You are. And that terrifies me because I'm not safe. Because you make me want to forget that I'm not." Julia sat across from her, their knees brushing under the table. "Then forget, just for tonight." Adriana studied her. "You don't ask what I do, who I am. I know who you are," Julia said. "You're the woman who looked at me like I'd spoken the language of her soul. The woman who remembers the taste of her mother's cooking, who flinches when someone touches her but leans in anyway." "That's enough for now." Adriana swallowed hard. "Most people want more." "I will," Julia said. "When you're ready to give it." The silence that followed was thick with unsaid things, but not the painful kind. The kind that settled between them like an agreement. "A beginning!" Adriana took another bite. Slower this time, savoring. "Tell me something you haven't told anyone," she said softly. "That's a big ask," Julia replied. "I brought cannoli," Adriana offered. "It seems fair." Julia tilted her head. "Considering, all right." She reached for her cup. "I used to sing opera. I trained for years. Then my mom died and I stopped completely. Sold the dresses. Avoided theaters. I haven't sung in front of anyone since." Adriana leaned forward, visibly surprised. "Why?" "Because the grief stole my voice," Julia said simply. "Every time I opened my mouth, I could only cry, and I got tired of crying." Adriana's voice was barely a breath. "Sing for me." "No, why not?" "Because I'm still trying to remember how." Adriana reached across the table, covering Julia's hand. "Then let me help you." Julia's pulse kicked. She stared down at their joined hands, then up into eyes that held more vulnerability than anyone else had ever trusted her with. "You really don't scare me, Adriana," she said. "But you should," Adriana whispered. "Not because I'd ever hurt you, but because being near me will make people notice you. And when people notice you in my world, they don't always have good intentions." "I've lived invisible long enough," Julia said. "Maybe being seen by you is worth the risk." Adriana closed her eyes for a moment as if the words physically hit her. When she opened them, her walls were cracked wide open. "I want to kiss you again." "Then kiss me," Julia whispered. Adriana stood, walking around the table, slow and precise, like every step was permission. She leaned down, cuped Julia's cheek, and kissed her like it was the only thing tethering her to the world. This kiss was softer than the one in the car, slower, deeper. It didn't demand, it asked. And Julia answered with her whole body, hands in Adriana's coat, mouth parting willingly, heart racing. When they broke apart, Adriana didn't pull away. She pressed her forehead to Julia's, breathless. "If I stay," she said, "I won't be able to pretend this is casual." "Then don't," Julia replied. "I'm not here for casual." "Neither am I." Adriana exhaled long and shaky. "Then I'm staying." And that night, two women who hadn't felt safe in years, in very different ways, curled into each other on a worn-out couch that creaked with every shift. They didn't make love. Not yet. But they kissed until their lips were sore, held each other until the silence became soft again, and fell asleep, tangled in warmth that neither of them had known they were starving for. Morning sunlight spilled through the crooked blinds, slicing across Julia's cheek like a kiss from the day itself. She stirred slowly, eyes blinking open to the soft rise and fall of Adriana's breath against her neck. Her first thought wasn't panic or disbelief. It was warmth, a quiet, settling kind of warmth she hadn't felt in years. Adriana was still asleep. One arm draped loosely over Julia's waist, her expensive coat tossed on the floor, silk blouse unbuttoned just enough to reveal the elegant line of her collarbone. Julia smiled against the pillow. "So, this is real." This had happened. No wine-fueled fantasy, no dream. Adriana Duca, terrifying, mysterious, and heartbreakingly human, had come into her home and stayed. Not just in body, but in the kind of way that said, "I want to be here." Julia exhaled softly and carefully slipped from the couch, letting Adriana rest. She padded barefoot into the kitchen and began making coffee, humming under her breath as she moved. Halfway through pouring the water into the mocha pot, she heard footsteps behind her. "You sing when you think I'm not listening," Adriana said, voice still raspy with sleep. Julia turned to find her leaning in the doorway, hair a little messy, expression soft. "I didn't realize I was. It's beautiful." "I told you I'm still remembering how." "Then don't stop." Adriana stepped closer, eyes searching Julia's face. "I haven't woken up like this in a long time." On a lumpy couch in Brooklyn. Safe, Adriana corrected. "And wanting to stay." Julia didn't reply right away. She reached for 2 mugs and poured the coffee. "Then stay." Adriana smiled faintly, accepted the mug, and took a sip. Then her gaze flicked toward the window. "I should tell you something." Julia's stomach dipped. "Okay. I didn't tell Marco where I was last night." "You mean your shadow with the earpiece?" "That's the one." So by now he's told my father?" Julia blinked. "Your father is in the Duca." Adriana gave a slow nod. "He doesn't like surprises." "And I think I just became one." "And me?" Julia asked. "What does that make me?" "A complication?" Adriana said, stepping closer. "But the kind I would choose again and again." Julia's breath caught as Adriana brushed a kiss to her temple. But even in that sweet moment, something shifted in her gut, a warning, quiet but insistent. That afternoon, the first crack in the stillness appeared. Julia left to teach a class while Adriana, against her own instincts, stayed behind. She needed to be alone in this space to breathe it in. It was small, cluttered, too warm, but it smelled like sugar and lemon and safety. She found herself seated at Julia's desk, fingers brushing over open books of poetry and old photographs. It was all so normal, so painfully normal. She almost didn't hear the knock. It came again, louder this time. Adriana opened the door cautiously, heart pounding. A man stood there, tall, clean-shaven, expensive coat. Not Marco, not security. Someone else. "You're not Julia," he said in English, voice clipped. "No, who are you?" "Someone who's been sent to find out what's so interesting about her." Adriana's eyes went cold. "You're with my father." "Of course." The man smiled thinly. "He's concerned. You disappeared and you didn't exactly leave breadcrumbs. Tell him I'm fine." You know he doesn't believe in fine. His eyes moved past her, taking in the apartment. "This is what you've been hiding in. You know what this looks like, don't you?" "What?" "Weakness." The word landed like a slap. Adriana didn't move. "Leave. Tell the girl to be careful," the man said, stepping back. Innocence has a habit of attracting fire. She shut the door in his face hard. Her hand shook as she locked it. That night, Julia returned home to find Adriana pacing. The calm she'd left behind was gone, replaced with something tight, caged. "What happened?" she asked. Adriana looked up, expression unreadable. "My father sent someone." Julia's heart clenched. Here. He knows about you about this. What does that mean? It means you're not invisible anymore, Adriana said. And that terrifies me. Julia, step closer. Then tell me what I'm walking into. Help me understand. Adriana didn't speak for a long time. Then I live in a world where nothing is free. Affection, trust, loyalty. It all costs something. And my family pays in silence, in leverage, in control. But you're not your family. No, Adriana said. But I was raised by them, molded by them. I carry their name, their secrets, and now you. You don't carry me, Julia said. We choose each other or we don't. I'm not afraid of your name. I'm only afraid of you pushing me away because you think you're protecting me. Adriana's eyes burned. I've lost people before. I don't want to lose you too. Then don't. Julia stepped forward, reaching for her hand. Let me decide what I'm willing to risk. Because I'd rather be in your world with open eyes than live safe in a world where I never met you. Adriana pulled her close, buried her face in Julia's hair. You don't know what you're saying. Then teach me. Their kiss this time was slower, not desperate, not frantic. It was a promise. And even with the threat looming just outside the door, the danger that now had a name, they kissed like there was still time, like the world hadn't noticed. Not yet. For 2 days, everything remained quiet. Too quiet. Julia kept waiting for something. A knock, a shadow, a sign that the world outside her door had shifted. But nothing came. Adriana stayed close. She didn't say it aloud, but Julia noticed the way her eyes tracked movement outside the windows. The way she paused before unlocking the door. The way her hand lingered on her phone a beat too long after every buzz. Still, she stayed. And with each hour they spent in each other's space, the tension between them curled tighter, warmer. At night, they shared the couch, then Julia's bed. Not with urgency, but with comfort, with proximity, with whispered words in the dark. Adriana learned how Julia liked her tea. Strong with too much lemon. Julia learned that Adriana didn't sleep unless someone touched her. Not sexually, just touch. A hand on her shoulder, a leg brushing hers, as if physical contact anchored her to the present. One night, as a storm raged outside and the tiny apartment rattled with wind, Julia found herself tracing lazy circles on Adriana's bare back. When was the last time you let someone in like this? She whispered. Adriana didn't answer at first. Then, with her voice barely audible, never, Julia paused, lips resting against Adriana's temple. Then why me? Because you speak in a language I forgot I missed, Adriana said. Because when I'm around you, I remember that I'm not just my last name. Julia pulled her closer. You're so much more than that. I see it every time you let your guard down. You make me want to be someone better, Adriana confessed. Not for the world, just for you. And then she kissed Julia soft and deep with a kind of reverence that felt like worship. They didn't make love that night. They didn't need to. They were already bare. But peace is a luxury in the Duca world, and it never lasts. On the third day, Julia received an envelope taped to her door. No stamp, no name. Inside, a single photo, blurry, long lens. Julia and Adriana in the street, laughing, holding hands. One line printed in block letters beneath the image. She's marked now. Keep her close or lose her. Julia's hands trembled. She looked around, heart thundering. The hallway was empty. Too empty. She locked the door, bolted it, and turned around just as Adriana entered the room. What's wrong? Adriana asked, instantly alert. Julia handed her the photo. Adriana's face went pale. No, what does this mean? Julia asked, voice shaking. Who sent this? Adriana's silence was answer enough. Rivals, she finally said, other families, people who want leverage. And I'm leverage. You're mine, Adriana said fiercely. And they know that now. So what happens next? Adriana paced, her movements sharp and controlled. They won't come after you directly. Not yet. This is a warning, a test. And if we ignore it, they'll escalate. Julia took a breath. Then we don't ignore it. Adriana stopped. What? We don't run. We don't hide. You said the world you live in is about power and silence. So maybe it's time we stop being silent. No. Listen to me. Julia stepped forward, hands trembling, voice firm. I know I'm not from your world. I know I don't understand all the rules. But I know this. I won't be a secret. Not because I need to be seen, but because people like them thrive when we shrink. I won't shrink. Adriana's eyes glistened. They'll hurt you? Then teach me how to fight. Adriana let out a shaky breath. You think I want you in this world? No, Julia said. But you've brought me into it already, and I'm not walking away. They'll use you to get to me. Let them try. You're not afraid? I am. I'm terrified, but not of them. I'm afraid of losing this, of you pushing me out. Adriana stared at her like she was seeing her for the first time. You're braver than anyone I've ever known. No, Julia whispered. I'm just in love with you. The silence that followed was thunderous. Adriana's breath hitched. Say it again. I'm in love with you. Julia repeated, voice steady now. I don't know when it happened. Maybe the first night. Maybe the moment you told me cannoli reminded you of your mother. But it's true. Adriana stepped forward, cubed Julia's face with trembling hands. Then I swear to you, nothing will touch you. I'll burn down everything before I let anyone take you from me. Their kiss was fire this time. Open-mouthed, desperate, bodies pressed close like they needed to fuse just to survive the threat now hovering around them. Clothes scattered, breath tangled, hands explored. And when they made love, it wasn't soft. It was messy, fierce, real. It was Adriana unlearning restraint, and Julia meeting her need for closeness with matching hunger. Hours later, Adriana lay beside her, head on Julia's chest, listening to her heartbeat. Tomorrow, I make a move, she whispered. What kind of move? A warning of my own. They want leverage. I'll show them what it costs to threaten someone I love. Julia ran her fingers through Adriana's hair. You said it. I meant it. Then let's stop pretending this is temporary. It never was. In the quiet after, Julia realized something. Her world had shifted. Not by force, not by fear, but by love. Hot, dangerous, and utterly unforgettable. Julia never expected to wake up with a gun under her pillow. Not because Adriana had left it there. She hadn't. But because that morning, as Adriana dressed in silence, slipping back into her armor piece by piece, Julia saw the way she moved, the tension in her shoulders, the finality in her posture. Adriana wasn't going to meetings or errands. She was going to war. Are you sure about this? Julia asked, sitting up, the bed sheets falling from her bare skin. Adriana turned, her black coat already buttoned, hair pulled tight. Her beauty now looked lethal. I have to be. What does that mean? It means I'm going to remind them who I am. And who are you? Adriana walked over and knelt beside the bed. I'm someone who once watched her mother's favorite bakery burn because her father needed to make a point. I learned young what fear does to people. It keeps them in line. It buys silence. I swore I'd never become in Julia, but if I don't make them fear me now, they'll come for you. They already started. Julia placed a hand on Adriana's cheek. You don't have to become a monster to protect me. No, Adriana whispered. But I might have to remind them I'm still capable of becoming one. She leaned in, kissed Julia with a slow intensity that said, remember me. Just like this. Then she was gone. Julia sat still for a long time after the door closed. The sheets smelled like Adriana. Her lips still tingled, but the silence that followed felt heavier than before, like something had been set in motion that couldn't be undone. Adriana arrived at the safe house just after noon. Inside, 3 men were waiting, all duca, but not by blood. One handled finance, another information, the third consequences. Adriana greeted none of them. She walked to the head of the long oak table and set down a single photograph, the one that had been taped to Julia's door. "You know what this is," she said. The room was silent. One of the Santoro boys. One man offered, "They've been watching you for months." "We didn't think they'd move." "They just did," Adriana said. "And they used her." "You want retaliation?" "No," Adriana's voice was ice. "I want clarity." She leaned forward. "I want them to know she's mine. I want them to know touching her is the same as touching me. And I want that message delivered in a language they understand." One of the men nodded. "We can make something visible." "No blood," Adriana said. "Not yet. But fear, yes. Enough to make their hands shake next time they see her name." "Consider it done." Adriana stood straight. Her eyes were sharper than they'd been in years. "And after that," she said, "we wait. They'll answer. And when they do, I'll decide what kind of woman I want to be." Back in Brooklyn, Julia didn't wait. She dressed quickly, made coffee she didn't drink, and sat at her desk with a notebook. She began writing lists, names, questions, things Adriana had said, phrases in Sicilian her Nana once used for danger. She knew this wasn't just Adriana's world anymore. She was inside it now, and she wasn't going to be the damsel waiting to be rescued. At noon, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check the news." Julia's heart stuttered. She opened her laptop and clicked the first link she saw. Explosion rocks private club in Queens. No casualties. Source claims it was a message. She clicked through images, fire, smoke. A shattered Duca crest graffitied on the front wall with a single word beneath it in red paint. Protected. Julia sat back. Her mouth was dry. Her stomach twisted. But in her chest, something else stirred. Power, not the kind that craved destruction. The kind that meant someone was drawing the line. She wasn't a secret anymore, and that in itself was an act of war. The knock came at sunset. She opened the door before Adriana could even raise her hand. The woman looked drained, coat smelling like smoke, hair windblown, eyes stormy. "Is this what it's going to be like?" Julia asks awfully. Explosions, messages, fear. Adriana didn't answer. She stepped inside. They needed to know. And now they do. And now Adriana said, "You have a target on your back. Then teach me to wear it." Adriana grabbed her by the waist, kissed her like she couldn't breathe until she did. Their bodies crashed against each other. Knee rising fast, too fast, like a wave cresting. Julia pulled off Adriana's coat, their lips never parting. Clothes fell between gasps and hands and the desperate ache to feel something real before the world spun again. They made love with urgency, messy, wild, breathless, as if claiming each other was the only thing they could control. And maybe it was. Later, as they lay tangled in sheets and sweat, Julia whispered, "Promise me something. Anything. When this gets worse, and we both know it will, don't shut me out." Adriana's jaw tensed. "It's how I survive." "Then unlearn it or we won't survive together." Adriana turned to face her. "You're not like the others." "Good," Julia said. "Because I'm not here to be protected. I'm here to be loved." "You are." Adriana kissed her shoulder. "God help anyone who tries to take you from me now." But outside, far from Brooklyn, a new set of eyes was watching. And this time, it wasn't a Luke arrivals. It wasn't family. It was something older, colder, and less interested in power than in pain. Someone had just declared war, and Julia had become the first weakness Adriana had ever admitted out loud. 3 nights passed without incident, but neither Julia nor Adriana believed in calm anymore. They moved through each day like dancers on a frozen lake, fluid, careful, aware that one wrong step could shatter the surface beneath them. Adriana's phone never left her side. Julia kept pepper spray in her purse now, even just a walk down the block. But inside the apartment, their world was different. Inside, they were lovers, real ones. Not built on adrenaline or desperation, but on softness. On mornings with shared coffee and quiet glances, on fingers tracing collarbones under blankets, on whispered Sicilian phrases that made Adriana's chest ache in the most beautiful way. They talked more about childhood, about scars, about loss. Adriana told Julia things she'd never said aloud, like how her mother used to braid her hair every Sunday. How she stopped wearing perfume after the funeral because everything that smelled good reminded her of what she couldn't have back. Julia listened and didn't try to fix it. She just held Adriana's hand tighter and kissed the place on her forehead where sorrow seemed to live. But peace is only ever a prelude in Adriana's world. And it ended at 10:43 on a Friday morning. Julia had just stepped out to buy oranges. Adriana, in a rare moment of solitude, was folding the blanket on the couch when a knock came. 3 short raps. No hesitation. She opened the door slowly, hand brushing the small of her back where the holster lived. No one there, just a flat black envelope on the doormat. No name, no seal, nothing. Adriana knelt slowly and picked it up, heart already racing. She closed the door, locked it, double-checked the windows, then slid the envelope open with a kitchen knife. Inside, a single sheet of paper. On it, 1 sentence. You're not the only one who speaks Sicilian. Beneath it, a phrase handwritten in dialect. Ancora troppo face pry-opened eyes too soon. Adriana stared at it, her fingers clenching. Her first instinct wasn't fear. It was rage. Whoever sent this wasn't from a rival family. They wouldn't write this way. Wouldn't know this way. This came from someone inside. Someone who knew where it hurt. The door opened behind her. Julia stepped in. Bag of oranges in one arm. I forgot to. She paused when she saw Adriana's face. Pale, still eyes fixed on the paper in her hand. What happened? Adriana said nothing. Julia dropped the bag. Adriana, slowly. Adriana held out the paper. Julia took it, read the line, read the handwriting. Something in her breath caught. This is Sicilian. Adriana nodded. But not just Sicilian. It's local. That's Messina hand. Julia stared. You mean someone from your hometown? Adriana's voice was low. From my mother's hometown. Someone who knows things I haven't spoken of in over a decade. Julia swallowed. What do we do? Adriana paced. We do nothing. Not yet. We wait. This wasn't a threat. It was a test. They're watching. They want to see if I panic. Are you panicking? No. Adriana lead. That night she stayed up while Julia slept, sitting at the window, one hand on the pistol under her cardigan, the other clutching a different letter. Old, faded, written by her mother in the same hand. The phrases matched the flow, the rhythm. Whoever had sent the black envelope had studied her mother's letters intimately. So, who still had them? At 3:17 a.m., her phone vibrated. A message. Unknown number. How long will she stay once she knows what you did the night your mother died? Adriana stared. Her pulse spiked. She didn't reply. She couldn't. Instead, she turned to the woman sleeping peacefully in her bed. Curls spilled across the pillow, arm outstretched like she'd been reaching for her even in sleep. And Adriana felt the old fear return. Not the fear of being attacked, the fear of being seen. Julia stirred. Come back to bed, she mumbled. Adriana slipped beneath the sheets, curled around her, and kissed the back of her neck. Semper, she whispered. Always. But the weight of the past pressed against her chest like a blade, and she knew soon the truth would come. And if Julia walked away after hearing it, Adriana wasn't sure she'd survive it. Julia knew something was wrong the moment Adriana opened her eyes. It wasn't the way she moved. Adriana was always composed, always precise. It was the way she avoided looking at her. The way her fingers hesitated mid-button, the The way her voice was too level when she asked, "How did you sleep?" Julia didn't answer right away. She just studied her heart, quiet and watching. "You're holding something back." Adriana's mouth twitched. "I'm always holding something back." "Not with me." That got a reaction. A flash of pain like someone pressing on a bruise. Adriana turned her back, walked to the window. The morning light hit her hair, casting her in gold. But Julia saw the tension underneath. "Someone knows about your mother," Julia said gently. "They know what happened that night." "They think they know." "Then tell me what really happened." Adriana didn't answer. Her hand rested on the window ledge. White-knuckled, Julia stood, crossed the room barefoot, and placed a hand on her back. "I can't protect you from something you won't let me see. You don't need to protect me." "Then let me stay beside you while you protect yourself." Adriana closed her eyes. Her voice came out flat. "The night my mother died, I was there." Julia stilled. "You said it was an accident." "It was, but only because I didn't stop it." She finally turned to face her. "We were fighting. She wanted to leave to take me with her. She knew my father was planning something and she didn't want me involved. But I was too angry, too proud. I told her I didn't want to leave. I said things I can't take back. I walked out and hours later, the car she was in exploded." Silence, heavy and choking. Julia took a step back, not from fear, but to breathe. "You think it was her fault?" "I know it was my fault. You didn't place the bomb." "But if I'd gone with her, if I'd listened, maybe she wouldn't have been in that car. Or maybe I would have died too. Either way, it changed everything." "That's not guilt," Julia said softly. "That's grief. You were a girl caught between two impossible choices." "I was 15, Adriana whispered, "and I haven't felt clean since." Julia stepped forward. "You carry that night like it defines you." "It does." "No," Julia reached for her hands. "It explains you." "It doesn't define you." Adriana looked at her, eyes swimming with something she hadn't let out in years. "How can you still touch me knowing that?" "Because I love the woman who came back to that apartment every night for the last week. The woman who made me breakfast in silence because she didn't know how to say she was scared. The woman who kisses me like she's asking for forgiveness and giving it at the same time." Adriana swallowed, her fingers tightened. What if they send more? What if they dig deeper? What if they turn you into the next warning? Then we face it together. Adriana stared at her. "You're not afraid of me." "You keep asking me that," Julia said. "But the truth is, I think I scare you." "You do." Adriana smiled bitterly. "You make me want things I told myself I can never have again." "Then want them." Julia kissed her knuckles. "Let yourself want me." "I already do." That night, they went out together in public to a quiet restaurant in Little Italy, tucked into the back. No security, no shadows, just a meal. Just two women pretending the city wasn't watching. But someone was watching. Across the street, behind the wheel of a silent black car, a figure sat with a camera in hand. Not Santoro, not Duca, someone new. Someone who didn't blink as the lens zoomed in on their table, capturing every moment. The wine, the way Julia laughed, the way Adriana leaned in closer. Her fingers brushing Julia's wrist like she didn't want to let go. Click, click, click. The photos were sent within minutes. To Maria Bellini. Subject: "You were right. She's falling hard attached." Photo 1, Adriana holding Julia's hand across the table. Photo 2, a kiss outside the restaurant, soft and slow. Photo 3, Adriana with her eyes closed, forehead resting against Julia's. A moment of pure surrender. Maria Bellini smiled. Let's see how loyal she stays when she finds out who really lit the fuse under her mother's car. Outside, under the city lights, Adriana walked Julia home with their hands clasped, unaware that their past was no longer just chasing them. It had changed form, taken a new shape. And this time, it wore the face of someone with patience and a grudge. Someone who had been waiting years to see it a Luca bag. Adriana couldn't explain the restlessness in her chest. Even in the warm safety of Julia's arms, even in the hush of their small apartment, something in her body refused to settle. The night after their dinner out, she barely slept. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, heart beating to the rhythm of something she couldn't name. Julia, curled beside her, murmured in her sleep, reaching instinctively for Adriana's hand. And Adriana let her. Because when Julia touched her, the noise went quiet, but the quiet didn't last. The next morning, Marco called. Adriana answered on the fire escape, wrapped in Julia's robe, cigarette burning between her fingers. "We found something," he said without preamble. "Or someone... who?" she asked, her voice already low and lethal. "You're not going to like it." "Say it, Maria Bellini." Adriana froze. Her lungs stopped moving. No, yes, she's dead. "Apparently not." Marco paused. "She's been offered for years. Changed names. Moved through Europe, but she's back. And she's the one who sent the envelope." Adriana's vision narrowed. "How do you know?" "Because she wanted us to silence." Adriana ground the cigarette out against the railing. "Julia can't know." "She'd find out. Not if I end it first." Marco hesitated. "Adriana, find her." Adriana hung up. When she stepped back inside, Julia was stirring coffee in the kitchen. Her curls were still a little damp from the shower, her face flushed with sleep. Adriana paused in the doorway, watching her like someone memorizing a dream before it vanished. "You're tense," Julia said without turning. "I woke up alone and you smell like smoke." "Bad habit," Adriana murmured, crossing to her. Julia turned to face her, arms folded. "What happened?" "Nothing you need to worry about." "That's not how this works." Adriana leaned in, kissed her forehead. "Let me handle it." Julia stared at her. "Are we going to start keeping secrets again?" "This one isn't mine," Adriana said. "It belongs to a ghost." Julia didn't push, but the seed of doubt was planted. That afternoon, while Adriana met with her men in a private garage under the city, Julia stayed home and did something she hadn't done in years. She dug. Online archives, message boards, names connected to Duca. One stood out. Maria Bellini, once an associate of the family, disappeared after Adriana's mother died. Rumors, betrayal, revenge, exile. Julia's fingers hovered over the trackpad. A blurry photo loaded. Two girls, Adriana and Maria, maybe 15, laughing arm in arm. Then she saw it. The bracelet on Maria's wrist. The same bracelet Adriana wore every day. Julia stared. Her stomach dropped. She loved her, she whispered to no one. And she lost her. Across the city, Adriana stood in a dark hallway, face to face with the past. Maria Bellini hadn't aged much. Her eyes were harder, but her smile was the same, sharp and intimate and cruel. "You always knew how to find me," she said. Adriana didn't blink. "You left me to bury my mother alone. Your father would have killed me if I stayed." "He did kill her." "We all did," Maria said, stepping closer. "You, me, him. We were all part of the machine. So, what do you want now?" "Justice, revenge, truth," Maria said, told loud enough for your little girlfriend to hear. Adriana's jaw tensed. "If you touch her, I won't have to. You'll ruin it all by yourself. That's what love does to people like us." Adriana stepped forward, voice low. "I will burn down everything you're hiding behind." "Then do it." "But before you strike the match, tell her about the fire that made you who you are." Adriana stared at her. "I already did." Maria blinked. Just for a moment. That was the weakness Adriana needed. "Stay out of my life, Maria. You can't cut out your shadow." Maria said, smiling. "You just think you can." Adriana turned and walked away, heart pounding, blood hot. When she got home, Julia was on the couch, laptop on her lap, eyes too calm. "You found her," Julia said. Adriana froze. I looked her up. Julia continued. "I saw the picture. I know. Adriana sat down slowly. What do you think you know? That she mattered to you. That she hurt you? That your silence about her is louder than any threat. Adriana reached for her hand. I was 15. I thought she loved me. I didn't know she was feeding my mother's movements to my father's men. The night my mother died, she ran. I never saw her again until today. Julia's eyes filled. And now she wants to destroy the one good thing I've built. Julia leaned in. Then don't let her. I'm not going anywhere, Adriana. You don't lose me because you were young and broken and used. Adriana breathed out a sound half sob, half laugh. I don't deserve you. Maybe not, Julia said, but you have me anyway. They kissed slow and deep, mouths tasting of salt and forgiveness. Outside, the night thickened. The city held its breath. Inside, two women clung to each other. Not because they were afraid, but because they'd finally stopped running. And maybe, just maybe, love wasn't about what survived the fire. Maybe it was about who stayed to rebuild when the smoke cleared. The next morning, Julia didn't wake to kisses or whispered Sicilian lullabies. She woke to voices, low, urgent in the hallway. She slipped out of bed, pulled on Adriana's oversized shirt, and opened the bedroom door silently. Adriana stood by the front door, Marco in front of her, shoulders rigid, voice firm. She's making moves. Where? Adriana asked. Lower East Side. Someone torched one of our fronts. No casualties, but the message was clear. Maria and no one else would dare. Marco said she wants a reaction. Then she's going to get one. Julia stepped into view. No, she won't. Both of them turned. Adriana's face tightened. Julia, you said we weren't hiding anymore. I meant from them, not from this. Julia folded her arms. She's trying to draw you back in to make you become the person she remembers. The one who didn't think before burning things down. Adriana glanced at Marco, who gave a slight nod and left without a word. The door shut with a soft thud. I can't let her tear everything apart. Adriana said, she already tried once. I survived, but this time she's aiming for more than just my name. She's aiming for you. Then let's take her power away. How? By refusing to play her game. Julia, this is not a game. Then stop letting her make the rules. Adriana stared at her. You think walking away is strength? No. I think facing her with nothing but truth is. And what truth would that be? Julia stepped closer. That she didn't break you. That she doesn't get to decide who you are anymore. That the Adriana I know, the woman who cooks at midnight when she can't sleep, who listens to poetry in a language only ghosts speak, is stronger than whatever Maria wants her to be. Adriana's hands trembled. She closed the space between them. She was my first everything, she said softly. My first kiss, my first betrayal. She was the one person I trusted before I knew what trust could cost. And now you have me, Julia whispered. You get to build something new. Adriana's voice cracked. I don't know how I do, Julia said. We start by choosing not to burn things. We build instead. That night, Adriana called a meeting. Not with her father's men, not with Marco, with someone else. Someone she hadn't seen in years. A woman named Cecilia, Exuka enforcer, long retired, now running a small cafe in Queens. She was the only one Adriana had ever feared growing up, and the only one she'd ever trusted to speak the truth. They met after hours. Adriana sat across from her in the kitchen, steam curling from a chipped espresso cup. Marie's back, Adriana said. Cecilia nodded once. I heard. She's escalating. But I don't want to play by the old rules. Then don't, Cecilia said. But understand, choosing peace means inviting war. If you don't retaliate, they'll think you're weak. I'm not. Then show them who you are now, not who your father made you. She's threatening the woman I love. Cecilia raised an eyebrow. Then you have something worth protecting. That's dangerous. Adriana smiled bitterly. Everything real is. So what do you want from me? Cecilia asked. A message, Adriana said. Something quiet, elegant, a reminder that I'm not afraid, but I'm not interested in blood. Not unless they force my hand. Cecilia took a long sip of coffee. You sound like your mother. The words hit like a fist to the ribs. Adriana looked away. She was better than all of us. So be better too. That night, while Cecilia's message moved silently through old channels, Julia waited at home pacing. She didn't call. She didn't text. She trusted Adriana now in a way that scared her. But love, she learned, wasn't about constant reassurance. It was about letting the other person breathe. When the door finally opened at 1:14 a.m., Adriana stepped in and leaned against it, exhausted. It's done. Julia crossed the room and took her face in her hands. Did you burn anything? No fire, Adriana whispered. Just a shadow. Good. Their kiss was quiet, deep, full of exhaustion and survival. They moved through the apartment like water, flowing into each other, their bodies soft and warm and slow. That night, their love didn't explode. It unfolded. Hours later, tangled in sheets, Julia whispered. You know what scares me? What? Adriana murmured, fingertips tracing her spine. This feels like forever. It is, but I don't want forever if it's just us running. We're not, Adriana said. We're building. Outside across the street, Maria sat in a car alone, watching the lights go out in Julia's apartment. She didn't raise her camera. This time she just stared angry, envious, hungry, but mostly for the first time uncertain because the Adriana she knew had been forged in fire. But this Adriana, the one in love, the one who didn't strike back, she was something new, something Maria hadn't planned for. And that made her dangerous in a way Maria hadn't expected. She gritted her teeth. Let's see how long that softness lasts. Then she drove away, headlights disappearing into the dark. But the war she thought she could control, it had already started changing. Because love wasn't just weakness. Sometimes it was strategy. And Adriana Duca had just learned how to fight without blood. 3 days of quiet followed, enough to make Julia believe just for a moment that the storm had passed. She cooked. She worked. She taught a private lesson where the student asked if she had fallen in love or something because she smiled so much now. She did. She smiled more, slept better, kissed Adriana every chance she got. Adriana, in turn, seemed lighter, still alert, always watching, but different. Like she was starting to believe peace could be something more than a pause between gunshots. They bought groceries together, argued about olive oil. Julia taught her how to make vodka from scratch, and Adriana read Neruda poems out loud while it baked. It was almost domestic. It was almost safe until it wasn't. It started with a knock. Late? Unannounced. Adriana answered before Julia could reach the door. Marco stood there, his face grim. She made contact. With who? With him? Julia stepped into the hallway. Who's him? Adriana's eyes turned cold. My brother. Julia blinked. You never told me you had a brother. Because I barely do. Adriana stepped back inside, jaw tight, arms crossed. He lives in Milan, keeps his hands clean. Let me take the fall for everything that went wrong here while he built a new image for the family over there. Marco followed her in. He's coming back. Maria's convinced him the legacy is at risk. It is, Adriana said, but not because of me. She's playing him, Marco added, framing your silence as weakness. Your relationship with Julia as distraction. So he'll try to take control. Julia stood still, watching Adriana shift into the version of herself that Julia hated to see. The strategist, the cold Duca heir. But then Adriana looked at her and something cracked. This changes things. Why? Julia asked, heart already climbing. Because he's not like Maria. Because he's blood, Adriana said. And blood in my world means obligation. What does that make me? Adriana's jaw flexed. Choice. That night they didn't talk much. Adriana was quiet, pacing the apartment, taking calls in the bathroom with the door closed. Julia sat on the couch with a book she couldn't read, feeling like the walls were inching closer. When Adriana finally sat beside her hours later, she didn't speak. She just rested her head on Julia's thigh. Julia ran her fingers through her hair. "You don't have to face this alone." "I do." "No, you don't." Adriana looked up. "Julia, if it goes wrong, I'm still here. But if you shut me out, that's when you lose me." Adriana sat up, grabbed her face gently, then promised me something. "Anything. If he tries to pull you into it, if he tries to use you, I won't let him." Adriana exhaled, kissed her hard, and Julia kissed her back like she was sealing a pact. The brother arrived on a Wednesday. He was nothing like Adriana, where she was sharp lines and silent power. He was all polished charm and politician smiles. His name was Lukaduka, a cruel joke in its own right. And he greeted Julia with a kiss on each cheek and eyes that cataloged her like a threat. "So you're the one," he said in Italian. "The woman who made my sister forget who she is." "She knows exactly who she is," Julia answered, meeting a stare. "You're just late to notice." Adriana stood behind her, silent but burning. Luca smiled. Sicilian bold. "I see why she likes you." They talked tense, cordial, empty politeness layered over dangerous undercurrents. When he left, he kissed Adriana's cheek like a brother, but his whisper was anything but familial. "If she makes you weak, I'll remove her myself." Adriana didn't tell Julia. Not that night. Not the next. She kept it buried even as they undressed in silence. Even as they held each other in the dark. But Julia felt it. The shift, the weight, the lie. And it hurt. The next morning, she confronted Marco. "I know he threatened me," she said. "Tell me I'm wrong." Marco hesitated. "You're not." "Why didn't she tell me?" "Because she's afraid. Of him?" "No," Marco said quietly. "Of you walking away?" Julia walked back to the apartment slowly, heart pounding. She found Adriana at the kitchen counter making espresso, trying to be normal. Julia took the cup from her hand and set it down. "He threatened me." Adriana froze. "Julia, don't lie to me." "I was protecting you from the truth." "You promised not to do that." Adriana looked down. "I thought if I could handle it first." "You don't get to decide what I can handle." "I'm sorry." Julia stepped closer. "Don't do it again." Adriana nodded. "I won't." They stood in silence. Then Julia whispered, "If he tries anything, I won't wait for you to fix it. I'll fight." Adriana looked at her like she was seeing her for the first time. "You would." "I already am." That night they made love with an urgency that came from knowing peace wouldn't last. There was no softness, only fire, hands gripping, bodies colliding. Words in Sicilian gasped between kisses. Later in the stillness, Adriana whispered, "He won't hurt you." Julia replied, "No, because I won't let him." And somewhere across the city, Lukaduka looked over a file with Julia's face on the cover and smiled. "She's not her weakness," he said to Maria. "She's her shield." Maria leaned against the table. "Then we break the shield first." But what they didn't understand, what they never understand, was that love doesn't just protect, it transforms. And the woman Adriana once was, she didn't exist anymore. Julia waited until Adriana left. She kissed her goodbye like it was any other morning. Let her walk out the door wearing her black coat and unreadable expression. Watched the elevator doors close, and then she moved. She didn't tell Marco. She didn't text Adriana. She didn't pause to rehearse or second guess us. She'd spent enough time watching from the sidelines. Enough time being protected, being the innocent, being the one everyone tried to shield like she couldn't take the heat of the fire she was already standing in. She was done waiting for permission to fight for the life she was building for the woman she loved. Julia wasn't a soldier. She wasn't trained in surveillance or strategy, but she was smart, determined, and no one ever suspected the woman with a notebook in her hand. and a quiet smile. She took the train, transferred twice, walked 7.5 blocks to a cafe she'd seen in one of Luca Duca's press appearances, an elegant spot on the Upper West Side where he held his private meetings. No bodyguards in the open, no gunmen on rooftops. He wanted to be seen as legitimate now, as untouchable. Perfect. She walked in and asked for a table. The hostess blinked at her. "We're reservation only." "Tell Luca Duca his sister's girlfriend is here," Julia said calmly. "He'll make room." 15 minutes later, she sat across from him. He was just as polished in person, all charisma and subtle menace. "Well," he said, folding his hands, "I didn't expect you to be the one to come find me. I'm tired of being underestimated. Then you shouldn't dress like someone who still thinks the world is fair." Julia smiled. "And you shouldn't mistake silence for weakness." His eyes narrowed. "What do you want to make something clear?" "By all means." "You touch her. You threaten her. You try to take what's hers." "What's ours?" "I will not wait for Adriana to stop you." Luca laughed. "You think I'm afraid of you?" "No," she said. "You should be." He leaned forward, voice cold. "My sister used to be the most dangerous woman in the family, and now she sleeps beside you barefoot and open." "You made her soft." "No," Julia said, gaze steady. "I made her human, and that's something you'll never be able to understand, because power is all you know. But she's learning to love. She's learning to live. And that makes her stronger than you'll ever be." "You think love is stronger than legacy?" "I think legacy without love is just a tombstone." Lucas stared at her for a long, silent beat. Then he stood. "Enjoy your lunch." "You're going to back off," she said, not moving. "Because if you don't, she won't be the only Duca with blood on her hands." Luca paused, then glanced over his shoulder. "That's a threat." "No," Julia said. "That's a promise." She waited until he left. Only then did she let her hand shake. Only then did she let herself exhale. Adriana found out within the hour. Marco told her she did what? She went to him, alone. She didn't tell anyone. Adriana stared at the floor, blood draining from her face. Where is she now? Safe. Home. Adriana drove like the city was burning. She burst into the apartment to find Julia reading on the couch like she hadn't just confronted. A man capable of ordering hits with a glance. "You went to him." Julia looked up. "I did. Why?" "Because I'm not afraid of him. And because you needed to see that I don't belong in the shadow of this thing you're fighting. I'm beside you, Adriana, not behind you." Adriana crossed the room in 3 long strides, grabbed her face, and kissed her hard. "You're going to be the death of me." "No," Julia whispered. "I'm going to be the reason you live." Adriana shook her head, half in awe, half in terror. "He could have, but he didn't. What did you say to him?" "Enough." Julia's eyes softened. "And maybe more than I should have, but you listened." Adriana pulled her in and held her tight. Her arms wrapped around Julia like a lifeline. "You terrify me." "Good. Now you know how it feels." That night they didn't make love like they were trying to escape the world. They made love like they were anchoring themselves to it. Like every touch, every breath was a decision to stay, to stand, to fight. When Adriana fell asleep, Julia lay beside her with her hand on her chest, feeling the steady rhythm of a heart that had once only known war, now learning to beat for something real. Across the city, Maria watched the footage of Julia entering the cafe of Lucas, storming out minutes later. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. She just turned off the screen and picked up her phone. "Plan B," she said. On the other end, a voice asked which target. Maria's eyes glittered. Not her thumb, them. And so the war shifted again, but this time Julia wasn't the one being protected. She had stepped into the fire and she brought her own matches. It started small. A canceled bank card. A translation client who suddenly dropped Julia without explanation. A university email stating her classes were under review. She told herself it was coincidence, bad luck, temporary. But when she returned to her apartment one afternoon and found the front door slightly open, her breath stopped. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing broken, but someone had been there. Someone had walked through her space, touched her things, and left the window open just enough to let in a winter wind. Adriana arrived 10 minutes later. She didn't speak. She just locked the door, checked every room, then called Marco with a voice made of stone. "It's begun," she said. Julia sat on the bed, her hands shaking, trying to hold herself together. Why? Adriana knelt in front of her. Because you stood up. Because they couldn't make you afraid. So now they're trying to make you small. It's working. No, it's not. Adriana placed Julia's hand over her heart. I'm still here. You're still here, and they don't get to define what fear feels like for us. Julia looked into her eyes. How do we fight this together? But it got worse. The next day, Julia's photo was posted anonymously on a forum tied to organized crime. The caption read, "DeLuca's distraction." The comments were worse. Threats, speculation, a leak of her phone number. Messages began pouring in. Vulgar, violent, invasive. Adriana threw the phone in the sink and smashed it with a cast iron pan. Julia didn't stop her. That night, they stayed in complete silence, held each other in the dark. And when Julia cried, Adriana didn't speak, didn't soothe. She just held her tighter and let her feel every drop. The next morning, Julia stood in front of the mirror. She stared at herself for a long time. Then she pulled her hair back, tied it with Adriana's scarf, and put on black. Not for mourning, for war. "Take me to them," she said. Adriana blinked. "Who? Your people." "The ones who would die for you." "Why?" "Because I'm done being a liability. If I'm going to be a target, I might as well be trained to take the damn shot." "No. No more. I'll protect you. We protect each other." "That's the deal." Adriana studied her like she was seeing her for the first time all over again. "You're serious?" "Dead." Adriana made the call. The compound was 20 minutes outside the city, a converted warehouse guarded and gray. Julia walked in beside Adriana like she belonged there, even when every set of eyes turned to follow her. "She's not decoration," Adriana said to the room. "She's with me." One of the men, older, scarred, looked her over. "You trust her?" "I love her," Adriana said. "That's stronger." They began with basics: disarming, reaction timing, situational awareness. Julia didn't flinch. She bruised. She bled. She got up every time. Adriana watched her from a distance. Pride and panic twisted in her gut like wire. But when Julia pinned her trainer to the mat on the third day, breathless and grinning, Adriana had to turn away before her chest cracked open. That night, Adriana kissed her like it was the first time. Desperate, grateful, starving. "You're changing," Adriana whispered. "No," Julia said. "I'm remembering who I was before I learned to make myself small." "I want to protect you," Adriana murmured. "Then protect the version of me that fights." They made love on the floor on the couch against the wall. It wasn't tender. It was wild and wordless and raw. And when Julia fell asleep, Adriana sat beside her, eyes burning with something she didn't have a name for. Across the city, Maria sat in a high-rise suite watching new footage. Julia training, Julia fighting, Julia bleeding. "She's adapting." One of her people said no. Maria said, "She's transforming, and if we wait too long, we won't be able to touch her." "So what now?" Maria turned off the screen. "We stop attacking the body." Her voice went cold. "We go for the heart." Maria moved fast, but not with bombs or threats. Not this time. This time she used words. She knew Julia's past. Her family in Sicily, the village where her Nana still lived, the landline she still used, the priest who baptized her. She knew Adriana's silence would be her weapon, and she knew exactly how to drive a wedge deep enough to make even the strongest woman question everything. Julia received the letter 3 days later. Plain envelope, No return address, just one line, handwritten in elegant, familiar script. Did she tell you the truth about who placed the bomb that killed her mother? Julia stared at it for a long time. Then she folded it neatly and slipped it under her pillow without a word. That night, Adriana returned late from a meeting with Cecilia. She was tired, cold, distracted. She didn't notice Julia watching her. Didn't see the weight in her eyes. "I made pasta," Julia said. "You didn't text. I'm sorry." Adriana kissed her cheek, but Julia didn't lean in. "Adriana, Aish, was it your father who ordered the hit on your mother?" Adriana froze. Her whole body went still. "Then why are you asking me that now?" "Because someone wants me to doubt you." Adriana turned slowly. "What did they send you?" Julia handed her the note. Adriana read it once. Her mouth didn't move. Her hands didn't shake, but her heart stopped. Julia saw it, felt it. "Tell me the truth," Julia whispered. "Please." Adriana sat down. "My mother was planning to run with me, but someone leaked her out. Maria? Yes. And your father?" Adriana nodded slowly. He approved the hit, but she stopped. The air went cold. "Adriana, he didn't order it," she said, voice cracking. "He told someone to handle the situation discreetly, that someone misunderstood." Julia's stomach dropped. "Who?" Adriana looked up, tears brimming but not falling. "Me." Silence. The kind that doesn't echo. The kind that suffocates. "I told one of the enforcers what car she'd be in, what time she was leaving. I thought they'd scare her, block her, stop her from taking me, but instead she stopped. I was 15 and I thought I could control a world I didn't understand." Julia sat down slowly across from her. "You didn't place the bomb, but I placed the map in their hands." "You were a child." "A child with blood on her palms." Adriana finally looked at her. "That's why I didn't tell you." "Because I can't forgive myself." "But I can," Julia said, voice steady. "I already have," Adriana blinked. "You don't hate me. I love you even now. Especially now." And that was it. The moment Maria had engineered so carefully, broken, cracked down the middle by the thing she'd underestimated most. Love that refuses to shatter. Love that bends and bends, but doesn't break. That night, Maria made her final move. A fire set beneath the cafe where Cecilia worked. It didn't catch the building, but it sent a message. Adriana drove there in minutes. Marco was already on site. "Nobody hurt." He said they used accelerants. "Professional." Cecilia met Adriana at the back door. "You know who did it?" "Yes. You gonna finish it?" Adriana looked at the flames, then turned to Julia, who'd insisted on coming. "No," she said. "We're going to end it differently." "They called Maria," she answered, laughing before they spoke. "You survived." "We always do," Julia said. Maria's voice turned sharp. "You think you've won?" "No," Adriana said. "I think we've changed the game." "You don't scare me." "We're not trying to." Julia leaned in. "But you should ask yourself something, Maria. Why do you keep trying to destroy something you never had the courage to want?" Silence. A beat. 2. Then the line went dead. Maria never struck again. Weeks passed. Then months. The shadows quieted. The forums stopped mentioning Julia. The whispers faded. But the women didn't forget. They healed together in slow, careful ways. Julia started teaching again, opened a language school in a quiet space downtown. Adriana helped fund it under a different name. She attended classes, learned Sicilian the right way. Bad pronunciation, better kisses. They traveled Sicily first to see Nana. She hugged Julia so tight. Adriana thought the old woman would shatter her ribs. She pulled Adriana close next, held her face, and said in pure dialect, "You have her eyes, but your heart, that's new." Adriana cried in her arms. And in that moment, a cycle ended not with revenge, but with return. 1 year later, Julia stood on a balcony in Rome, looking out at the lights. Adriana stepped behind her, wrapped her arms around her waist, and kissed the back of her neck. "Marry me?" she whispered. Julia didn't flinch, didn't gasp. She just smiled. "You're late," she said. "I've been ready." They kissed under the stars, no guards, no secrets, no shadows, just two women, two hearts that refused to be broken, and a love that survived every fire set to destroy it. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you.